Welcome back for Form Check Friday. We're gonna tune in to some good vibes and some lifting. Getting started here, our first submission comes from Emmanuel. Now, Emmanuel sent me a video of him doing some sumo deadlifts. He said he recently switched over from conventional because it was giving his back some problems. He's found sumo deadlifts to be way better. Now, the reason I'm including this video is not necessarily because there's a heck of a lot wrong with it, but because I've gotten the same question a couple of times now. I had a couple submissions that I went through today where people said, I'm pulling sumo, but it's slow off the floor. Is there anything I can do to make it a little bit quicker off the floor? Now, if you look at Emmanuel's deadlift here, you can see, yes, it's a little bit slow off the floor, but you can also see his back angle, and where he sets it when he initiates the pull is where it stays, and that's what we want to see when we're doing sumo deadlifts. A lot of times, just because of the leverages and the way that they change throughout the lift, we will be a little bit slower off the floor, but I would say 9 times out of 10, this is actually kind of a good thing. It's a good indication that you're probably maintaining your back angle. If your lockout is easier, that's kind of the strength curve we want to see in a well-performed, technically sound sumo deadlift. So I'm going to say, Emmanuel, I wouldn't change much about your deadlift. Looks like we can maybe get a little bit more back extension, but if your thoracic or your upper back is rounded a slight bit, that's definitely not a big issue, because what you're doing is you're maintaining the same back angle from start to finish, and your hips are finishing the movement. You're finishing your deadlift with hip extension, not back extension, which is a big difference that I always try to make when we're critiquing deadlifts.
You ready? Now find that feet. There it is. Oh yeah, that's good. Ho! Now step.
This next video comes from Mikhail. Now he submitted some squats and some pause deadlifts. So taking a look at his squats, we can kind of see, and he noticed this himself and mentioned it in his email, but when he hits the bottom, he kind of rocks forward and his shoulders lose a little bit of positioning and everything kind of squishes a little bit as he hits the bottom. A couple of things that I found really, really beneficial for people who tend to squish, if you want to use that terminology when they hit the bottom, are pin squats and pause squats. So Mikhail, if you're not using some of those in your programming, I would maybe try those out. The other thing that might work pretty well is just really focusing on keeping that upper back tight, because that shoulder roll is a big part of everything moving forward, and the bar kind of pulling you forward as you hit the bottom. So if you think about really just keeping those shoulders in position, keeping your lats on, etc., as you sit right into the bottom of the hole of your squat, that's gonna go a long ways. As you can see on his deadlifts here, not really many issues at all. So we're not seeing much loss of positioning. He's doing some nice light pause deadlifts, so those I wouldn't change a thing about. So our next submission comes from a guy named Sam. Now Sam sent us some squats, some bench press, and some deadlifts.
Whoa, we're here to let you know.
Deadlifts. Anyways, going back to the squat. What we see here, Sam, is we see, I think you mentioned in your email that you have trouble getting your hips back into position out of the hole. We can see it really pronounced on the first rep here. When you hit the bottom, it takes you a second right around the sticking point, but I think that's almost because you're focusing on being too upright. So what I want you to do is, if you watch your squats, you can see you're definitely initiating by pushing the knees forward. What I want you to do is I want you to try and think about pushing back onto your heels just a little bit more and allow just a little bit more torso lean. So I want you to intentionally put a little bit more tension into the hips, especially as you come out of the bottom. If we're hitting the sticking point that hard, one of the things we can do is intentionally kind of push the butt back behind us as you come up, because you're super, super upright. I think if you push your butt back intentionally, you're gonna get into those glutes a little bit better, and you're gonna be able to get a little bit more hip extension torque to help you through that sticking point. Probably gonna go a long ways. If we go to your bench press here, picking up some weird shit here.
Bath north of.
There we go. So if we go to your bench press, what we're seeing is the touch is just a little bit too low. So when you're coming down, the bar's touching almost in front of your elbows, and this is a really good angle for that. We can kind of see the angle between the elbow and the bar. What we want is nice stacked joints straight up and down, and what we've got is your elbows are a little bit behind the bar. The other thing you're doing is you're doing touch and go, which in most cases, I would recommend for a powerlifter to not be a primary movement. I would work with almost exclusively pause benches. Definitely touch and go has its place. I would use it more as a supplemental or an accessory exercise though. So let's work on getting that touch a little bit higher, or keeping those elbows a little bit more tucked as you get to the touch, because it looks good almost all the way down, and then that last instant the bar kind of dumps forward and then you got to throw it back into position. The other thing about touch and goes is you're getting a little bit loose in the shoulders as you change your direction. So what I would try to cue a lifter in that situation to do would be to think about squeezing your shoulder blades super, super tight as you get right to the chest, and as you initiate the press, before you think about pushing, think about squeezing the crap out of your back. So squeeze your back and press, kind of at the same time, but squeeze your back first. Now going on to your deadlift, Sam. What I'm seeing here is honestly not a lot of issue. You mentioned in the email that you lose position in your back. I don't really see too much of that. I definitely do see things break down as you get towards the end, but it looks like A, you're in a good starting position, B, you're creating a good position with your back and good alignment, and C, you're maintaining it for the most part throughout each lift. What I would recommend, or what I would get from that, would be that we probably need to work on back strength a little bit more. So I would throw in maybe some more heavy bent over rows, maybe some pendlay rows, just a little more upper back work. Generally upper back work that's gonna put you in a position where you have to brace it. So I wouldn't do something like a chest supported row. I would do something more, like I said, a bent over row, so you're forced to brace a position that's similar to the deadlift. And I think that's gonna have a little bit more carryover to your deadlift, but honestly, it's just a strength thing. I don't think that's a technical thing. Up next, we got a video from Kaiser, and Kaiser's doing some squats.
Exercising should be an enjoyable experience. However, selecting a fitness club.
Kaiser's doing some squats, and what we're seeing here, he mentions in his email that he read that it was bad to push his hips back before he started his squat. Now, I don't agree with that. I think that in most cases, you're gonna wanna start by pushing back, loading the hips a little bit. And it looks like because of his reading this and his wanting to try and stick with whatever cue that he had read about and was trying to use, it looks like he's having trouble sort of how he's initiating the squat. Near the end of the set, it looks like he clears that up. Probably fatigue sets in and he goes to a movement pattern that makes a little bit more sense for him. But that first rep, maybe second rep especially, we can kind of see him shifting around with his hips when he starts. The biggest issue I'm seeing with your squat, man, is that when you hit the bottom, the bar's rolling forward on you. So like I was saying earlier to Mikhail, just really try and pin those shoulder blades in position, try to get those lats engaged a little bit more, and try to pull that bar down into your back a little more consistently, especially as you hit that bottom position. And now we got some deadlifts from a guy named Zach Swallow. Zach Swallow just switched from conventional to sumo. He says his sumos feel a lot better. And the first thing I thought of when I saw this video was actually Ben Pollock. These look like Ben Pollock's deadlifts. He's not a super flat back deadlifter. He's a sort of narrow stance sumo deadlifter. Has a little bit more conventional mechanic to it. And he is insanely strong. So because you're saying sumo feels a little bit better, I wouldn't worry too much about changing anything. But because you submitted, we're gonna take a look at it as if you were one of my lifters. So what I would recommend is trying to get that back a little bit flatter. It looks like as you start the pull, we're really getting those shoulders pulled out of position. We could use a lot more lats, we could use a lot more back extension, and a little bit more patience off the floor. It looks like more often than not, we're having to finish with back extension, which is gonna be way harder to do than finishing with hip extension. So those would be my critiques there. I wouldn't change the stance unless you're not able to get into a flat back in that position, in which case I'd try widening ever so slightly. But yeah, just really try and get that back a little bit tighter, sort that back position out a little bit, and try to create a little bit more patience off the floor so we're not rushing it and losing the position that we create. This next one comes from Joshua. Now Joshua, as you can see, is a real tall guy. He said he's been having some knee issues, so he's adopted a higher starting position with his hips. So I'm not gonna say sit your butt down or anything like that, because he's intentionally starting with a little bit of a higher hip to take some pressure off of his knee. The one thing I do notice, however, is if you watch, you'll notice as he gets to about his knees with the bar, he slides his knees in under the bar and then stands it up. what I would try to get you to do so that when it gets heavy, you don't end up hitching, which can cause you a lift in a competition. I would get you to ensure that you keep that weight on your heels as you go through lockout and pull that bar to you. Don't try to get your knees under the bar and stand up, meaning you're going forward to the bar if you want to think about it in those terms. But try not to slide your knees under the bar like that. We want to stay back on those heels, pull straight up and stay over the bar, and then squeeze the glutes, get a little bit of hip extension to finish the lift there. But it just looks like you're at risk for maybe hitching when the weight gets heavy. Other than that, everything looks pretty good. And last but not least, right here. There we go. Josh Park. So Josh Park, we're doing some squats here. Honestly, your mechanics and everything look really, really good. The one thing I'm seeing is that
We're sending help immediately, Mrs. Fletcher.
the one thing I'm seeing is that as you hit the hole and as you go through your set progressively, that bar starts to roll and pull you forward a little bit more each rep. So what I would try to play with, Josh, is I'd try to maybe look at getting that bar a ½ inch lower and into that groove right above your delt. So you can kind of see almost where it would go in the video. I just want you to try and bring that bar down a tiny bit, and I think you'll be less likely to get thrown forward by your bar position as you hit the bottom of your squat. That's about it for Form Check Friday today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. And if you guys like tank tops, like I like tank tops, they're gonna be in the store by the time this video goes up, as well as the restock of our shirts. So if you like those aqua coral ones, go get them. We'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.